We are pleased to participate in this Mayor Council breakfast for November. We want to thank all the members who have expressed to us items throughout the month to stay focused on. And I think that we have had another great month of working on issues that are both important to us and important to the members of the council. I wanted to start by introducing several new additions to our administration, and we hope that you will meet them today, but also spend some time with them over the coming months about issues of importance to you. Let me start with Michelle Bonner, who is the Director of the Corrections Information Council. Where's Michelle? Michelle, give a wave to everybody. Michelle joins us with a lot of experience in this area, and we're confident that she's going to be a great addition to our staff. Also, is Arthur Espinoza here? He's not here. Okay, where is he? I'm sorry? Okay. And the next person is Eugene Kinlow, who is well known to the members of the council. And Eugene joins us as the Director of the Office of Federal and Regional Affairs, the office led by our Senior Advisor, Beverly Perry. Eugene will focus on helping us continue to build our federal relationships and regional issues that face us. Next, I'm pleased to introduce Seth Miller Gabriel, who is the Director of the Office of Public and Private Partnerships. Seth, just step up so everybody can meet you. And Seth joins us with a lot of experience from around the country on working on deals, but also on best practices related to public-private partnerships. You will remember that the council passed last year the enabling legislation for public-private partnerships in the district, as well as funding this new office in this year's budget. So we're very pleased about that, and I'm also happy to name someone well known to you as well, Judah Gluckman, as the Deputy Director of that office. And Judah is here, and I think we'll just be moving offices, changing floors to go up to the City Administrator's suite. I'm also very happy to introduce somebody who we've all been waiting for, and that is the new General Manager for the Washington Metropolitan Area Transit Authority, Paul Wiedenfeld. So let's give Paul a big round of applause. Paul was unanimously approved by the Metro Board, and I want to thank Jack Evans for his leadership in the search for the new Metro General Manager. Paul joins us, and most recently having been the leader of the Baltimore-Washington International Airport in Maryland, and brings transportation and management and the really necessary urgency that Metro needs to move forward. And Jack, I don't know if you wanted to make any comments. I asked Paul late yesterday if he could join us to meet the council, and then he is on his way to a meeting in the Hill. And so I wanted to give him an opportunity just to say hello before he has to sneak away. You have anything to say before we turn
thank
the
you,
phone?
Mayor. And first of all, good morning to everyone.
Microphone.
Paul, we're very pleased that Paul is now the new General Manager. Metro takes office November 30th, and we're looking forward to working with Paul on a number of issues in the region. And I'm glad the mayor invited Paul today just for him to make a couple of words, and everybody put a name and a face together. And then in the future, Mr. Chairman, maybe we can have Paul come to one of our breakfasts and have a more in-depth discussion about issues that are of concern to the city regarding Metro. But Paul, welcome. We're pleased to have you on board. We have a lot of work in front of us.
Yes. Thank you, Mayor, and thank you, Jack. And we do have quite a bit of work in front of us. I will be very brief, but I did want to just share with you some of my immediate priorities. First and foremost is the safety and security of our employees and our customers that use the service every day. Second is the reliability getting that back to where we all want it to be and should be. And then third is getting our fiscal house in order. So that's where I'll be spending a lot of my time in the next 90 days, just so you're aware of that. I'm extremely excited about the opportunity. The mayor mentioned that I did run BWI. I also ran the Maryland Transit Administration with bus, subway, light rail, and commuter rail, so I have a deep understanding of those issues and have worked in the Washington region for years through WashCog and different means. So I appreciate you giving me the time, the brief time, and I wish you all the best, and I look forward to working with you.
Thank you, Paul. Thank you. And so with that, Mr.
Let me just
Yes.
say, we'll be happy to take up Jack's suggestion and have you come to one of our breakfasts, where we can grill you a little bit. Thank you,
Thank you, Mr. General Manager.
and welcome.
And let me now, Mr. Chairman, if there's nothing else, I'm going to turn it over to the city administrator to introduce the next items.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Good morning, Mr. Chairman and members of council. You had asked us for an update on our homeless set of initiatives, and so the deputy mayor and the director of the Department of Human Services are here to provide that update. We've worked with many of you on the legislative front, and we have been busy in implementing the mayor's plan around homelessness to make it a brief, rare, and non-recurring event for families and for individuals in the district. And so this will serve as an update on where we are with our family shelter system, where we have addressed a number of other issues for our singles, and what our plan looks like going forward. And so with that, I'll turn it over to Deputy Mayor Donald.
And actually, I'm turning it over to Director Zeilinger, who's going to get started.
Thank you. Good morning, members of council, mayor. I wanted to start, we've had 2 hypothermia alerts. We're into the hypothermia season.
Lori, the microphone.
And as you probably know, we have a winter plan that we begin work on as soon as the hypothermia ends from the prior year, debriefing what worked well, what we need to improve, to plan for the coming season. That winter plan is put together by our agency, Council on Homelessness, was passed on September 1st. And that really governs the life-saving services that we provide in terms of access to additional shelters, increased outreach, the activation of our hotline. What is new and different this year in our hypothermia plan is that we've added 9 vans. We had some old vehicles that were unreliable and that were not just enough to meet the demand. And we had a lot of people standing around waiting for multiple trips from vans to get to where to shelter and other places to get the services and help that they needed. So we're hoping that adding 9 vans will improve our flow and, most importantly, get people out of the cold faster and allow us to respond more quickly when we get calls to the hypothermia hotline. We also have made a policy decision to call alerts when there's a likelihood of precipitation, even when the temperature is above 32 degrees. So if it's 40 degrees and there's more than a 50% chance of precipitation overnight, then we will call an alert, just because we know that when people get wet and they're out in the cold overnight, that increases the chance of a hypothermia fatality, and we want to make sure that we're doing everything we can to provide those life safety services. And in our analysis of our usage of our services last year, we saw that there's just a core cohort of people who will not come into any other shelter, but will come into some of our smaller overflow shelters in the rec center. So opening those up, we really do get some folks into the system who otherwise are not coming into shelter. Moving on to the DC General replacement strategy. We are making progress on this front. We, in September 2014, the administration, the prior administration released an RFP looking for sites, and we have been, with our partners at DGS, going through those sites and making and figuring out what might work in terms of how it would fit in with the community, understanding access to public transportation, access to schools and to other services and supports that families need. We created a committee from the ICH to weigh in on what would be the design standards for that emergency family housing that we would open. As you know, our goal is to have an all-8-board strategy that provides emergency housing and facilities that serve no more than 50 families that are really integrated into the community. We have now, after the input from the committee and the legislation from the council, we have provided revised design guidelines to developers. We are, by the end of the year, looking to secure letters of intent for all of the different properties, and together with the council, our hope is that we will share our plan with the public end of year, beginning of the new year, and that you can expect around that same time the lease packages to come down and over to council for your consideration. We have looked both at properties that are within the district's inventory as potential sites, as well as, again, the properties that came to us through the solicitation. We are grateful to the partnership with council in the passage of the Advancing Year-Round Access to Shelter Policy and Prevention of Homelessness Act of 2015, which allowed us to advance our year-round access to shelter strategy for families, as opposed to only, as opposed to only providing shelter to families, as was the policy prior. When there's a right to shelter during hypothermia, we want to provide emergency services to families at the time they have emergencies and work to much more quickly help them transition back into permanency. We have been executing on that, and we again clarified the design configurations for the emergency housing for families that will be reflected in the sites that come to you. We wanted to talk to you a little bit about where we are. Our expectation is that every ward will shoulder the responsibility of caring for our most vulnerable residents, including those who are experiencing homelessness. We are identifying and have identified numerous sites across the city, and we will have a mixture of district-owned and leased properties and up to 284 replacement units to replace the full capacity and go slightly beyond the capacity of what we have right now on the DC General campus. Now, we know that it's very important to engage the community as we move forward to announce these sites, and so we've announced an overall vision of what the changes are to make the enhancements that are needed to the family homelessness system in terms of services. And we will, prior to announcing the sites, engage targeted stakeholders, including you on the council, ANC chairs, necessary ANC commissioners, members of our ICH committee, our partners at WIN, other community and faith leaders. We have identified and will be identifying people who would be likely key neighborhood supporters and able to carry the message before we do the unveiling. And so we would do several targeted briefings and then do the site-specific project unveiling. We would then go into a mode of doing some very deep and intensive community engagement to help people understand what we hope would be how these programs can fit into the community. We intend to have good neighbor agreements or good neighbor contracts where we're talking about what are going to be the ways that we operate that program within the community, what is important to the neighbors around it, and how do we come, and what are ways that they can be a partner with us so that we have a clear set of what understanding what people's fears and concerns are, and we're proactively and early on, before we even are breaking ground at any of these sites, beginning to figure out how we will make sure that we're addressing those. So that is, so we are moving forward with that. I think we had, in some of my one-on-one conversations with council members, we were shooting to make these announcements before the end of the year, because we've gone back with the new design specifications and are making sure that we're maximizing all of the different really important program priorities and other facilities that we care about that will make these dignified, supportive, beautiful places that we are all proud of in community. We are taking a little bit of extra time to ensure that we're getting the most out of each and every property before making sure that we've settled on the right set of opportunities there. I want to also just give you an update on where we are in terms of our family homelessness system. So the next slide in front of you is our emergency family housing census, which reflects sort of the rate at which families are coming in and coming out of the system. So we continue to experience a very high demand for emergency housing among families. We see that people are, it is really at its crux an economic issue, and we're working very hard to help families get the safety they need and transition out as quickly as possible. We're doing some work internally on our business process around housing placements and hope that we can step up our exits, which have slowed slightly since a few months ago. But we're still hard at work in all those, and we are ready for hypothermia season as it relates to the family system. Our hope is that we won't see the same kind of surge that we've seen in the past because families have been able to access emergency housing when they've needed it throughout the year. But there's also right now an expectation that the winter is when you can get access to those supports a little bit more easily. And so certainly over the weekend and yesterday with the first hypothermia alert, we saw quite a huge volume of demand at the Virginia Williams Family Resource Center. We are very hopeful with the additional tools that we have that we can better distinguish which families need a shelter placement to have their needs met and where we can help in additional ways. Also, I think it's important to know that we have had this fall 11,696 residents across the city who have signed the petitions to close DC General, so people are, and to be part of our goals to end family homelessness. And we've had 23 of the 41 ANCs who have passed resolutions supporting Homeward DC and our plans to end homelessness. And I believe, and I know you do, that the responsibility for caring for our most vulnerable residents and families needs to be shared by the entire district, and that's certainly what we've been hearing everywhere we go. With that, I'm going to turn it over to Deputy Mayor Donald to provide more information on the next agenda item.
Thank you. So I'm just going to talk briefly about the homeless encampments, since that's been in the news and a lot of attention has been paid to that because of the work that we have done over the last couple of weeks on the large campsite off of Rock Creek Parkway. But I want to point out that the addressing and responding to encampments is not something new. We do that. We've been doing it actually for years, and we do it routinely. The legal authority is cited here, and basically it is illegal for someone to have a camp or a temporary abode without a permit. And so people have raised questions about whether or not it's illegal to sleep overnight. It's not, but to have the campsites, and in our jurisdiction, it's pretty much tents that are the temporary housing. And when we have emergency housing space available, and this is really important, that we want to make sure that we are not acting to remove the campsites when we have no housing available via shelter or emergency or even permanent housing available. Then, but we do. So we continue with our protocol. So basically, we have a number of agencies responsible for the homeless encampment protocol. Department of Human Services and Department of Behavioral Health have outreach workers, and along with our private partners who are engaging the residents. And this doesn't start when we get an alert about a campsite. These engagement and outreach activities go on for many months, and some individuals who have been chronically homeless with a lot of mental health and health needs have been known to outreach workers for even longer than that. So when we have identified a campsite that we are going to remove, then the intensive outreach activities step up. Department of Public Works is a partner, Department of Transportation, and MPD are the core partners, and it's coordinated out of my office. The protocol implementation, they are the basic steps are we get referrals. These referrals may come from a resident, they may come from council members, they may come from our mayor's community relations team or anyone, and they are funneled to my office. Then we have a process of going out to determine whether or not this is an actual encampment. A lot of times we'll get a referral, and it's really someone who is squatting with their belongings. It may be in a shopping cart, maybe a bunch of belongings, but they're moving and they're not camping with a temporary abode. That is not a campsite. And so there are other ways that we address that. We go to determine if it's a campsite, and then we will schedule a cleanup with our partners. We are required to post notification. We do that. We give individuals 14 days and say we are coming to clean this campsite, and then we have the cleanup. Now, you know, this is these are persistent problems. The campsites, there are certain locations where people tend to congregate and they tend to come back. And so what we're doing now is really a more focused and routine process of going back and looking at the sites after a cleanup and making sure that individuals are not coming back. We had a campsite actually along the same area, 26 and K, earlier this year that we took a long time to clean up, and the result was a lot of debris, a lot of human waste, and conditions that were certainly unsafe for the people living there, but also for the neighbors. And so we have tightened up our process so we do not have that accumulation. As everybody knows, we went out over the last couple of weeks with a focused effort to clean up the campsite along Rock Creek Parkway, which had accumulated over 20, actually 23 to 25 tents in a very concentrated area, and also scattered along the periphery. And we did that on Friday, and the main area has been cleaned out. It has been fenced because there's a big project, a water project that is coming there. We still just, you know, to be candid, everyone is not gone, and we have gone back out, and we're going to continue our engagement activities to get the individuals to move on. I should also say that through the outreach efforts, we were able to identify housing for a number of the individuals. A couple of people were relocated who wanted to move out of the city and go back to their families, and we were able to do that as well. But these efforts continue, and that's our charge, and we will keep you informed. But if you get inquiries, you should please funnel them to my office.
Questions from members? Thank you for the presentation, Mr. Evans.
Yes, thank you very much for the presentation, and I certainly recognize how difficult this issue is on many, many levels, and I appreciate all the efforts you're putting into it. In particular, of course, I get constant complaints about the campsite that you were referring to in Foggy Bottom. And and people are, who live in the neighborhood, who live on I Street there, 26th Street, K Street, are very concerned about it. And the city did a huge effort to clean that out in the last week or so. But as of today, there are tents back again. So the question comes in, what are we doing on an ongoing basis to secure the site? Has any thought been given to possibly fencing the site off, recognizing that people have a lot of ingenuity and would figure out a way around the fence or through the fence? But again, the neighbors, one couple stopped me at dinner the other night and who have 2 children, and somebody was defecating in their front yard, and you know, the stories go on and on about people who are right across the street from where that encampment continues to come back again. So just what your thoughts are on an ongoing basis, particularly now that the weather's cold.
Right.
What are we going to do?
Right, and so certainly if someone is doing illegal behavior, then that's a call to the police, right? So what you described is illegal and inappropriate, and that has to be addressed from a public safety standpoint. That campsite, that area is really tricky. Some of the property is National Park Service property, some of it is ours, and some of the areas are really difficult are impossible to fence because of the access and underpasses. We have, as I noted, and I hope you had a chance to look at the main site on, right at Rock Creek Parkway, that it has been fenced off. We went back yesterday. There were 2 additional tents, and we're going back out to engage those residents. The spot that you're referring to across at 26 and K, there, I believe, are 3 tents over there, and each of those individuals, the outreach team has identified housing for. So we are in the process in the next week of finalizing the permanent housing. Those individuals have agreed to go into housing. So those tents, and actually 2 of the individuals have been there for a very long time, a couple and another gentleman. So we're going to address that individually. And then we're just going to keep going back out. And I think part of what has allowed the campsites to continue is that our enforcement has not been as consistent and persistent. And so after a while, we wait, and then there are months and months, and they've built back up. So we've been given the charge to go back out and to make sure that we're doing the appropriate posting, that the teams are engaging the individuals, and that we're moving them into permanent housing. If there are areas, and I talked with the city administrator about this last night and this morning, if there are areas that can be fenced, I think we've decided to do that.
Okay, just one last follow-up. Having done this now for 25 years, this comes and goes. We've seen in the last year, I'd say, a huge increase because the area we're talking about had been cleaned out, and there wasn't much presence there for a while, and then all of a sudden it really spiked. And this obviously caused for speculation on your part. Do you have any idea what has caused the spike, particularly in that area underneath the Whitehorse Freeway at the other end of Georgetown? And basically, in a lot of areas, at least in my ward, we've just seen something in the last year that I hadn't seen in the prior 2 or 3 years.
I'm not certain, and I don't have the long trajectory that you have, council member, in terms of that site. I do know that there were unintended consequences of some charitable acts on behalf of an individual who had gotten an agreement with, I believe, Home Depot to provide tents to people who are homeless, and those tents were distributed and people set up in that campsite. I think that led to the recent proliferation.
Okay, and then one final question, a different site, the Martin Luther King Library. It appears from when I went down there the other day, we're still dropping off a number of individuals at the library in the morning and picking them up in the evening. Has there been any progress? This goes back, for me at least, more than a year or 2 years, trying to figure out,
Yes.
when you drop everybody off at the main library, clearly they're going to go into the library, and that whole block becomes, particularly in the evening, now that it gets dark early, you go down there around 5 o'clock, it's dark, and it feels very dangerous on that block.
Well,
And so-
one thing, Jack, that I think that the council weighed in on as part of our comprehensive strategy is to have a day center. It's not only the case near Martin Luther King Library. I've had this discussion with Councilmember Brent Duffy as well, that the daytime hours for people who are homeless, where of course the intention is people can get out, look for employment, take advantage of services, and we want people to be able to do that, but they need to do it in a more appropriate setting. So part of what we're doing is, envisioning the site for the day center and the programs and services that will be available there.
Yeah. And then the last area, this keeps reminding me as I keep speaking. On Saturday and Sunday, I came to the office and drove down 13th Street. Franklin Park was, there must have been 50 to 100 people appearing to be homeless in the park, and there were a number of feeding vans that were feeding people in the park. So the park was largely unusable. So are there any observations on what's happening at Franklin right now?
Yeah, because it's not,
So that's also not a new issue. It's something that the Downtown Bid has talked with us about for a number of years. There are a lot of church groups from the district and from even outside of the district who come in and again, it's very well-intentioned charitable behavior to provide meals, and people come there to access those meals. So we certainly know what's going on there. When we have a downtown service center, we will have alternate options inside where we can engage groups to come in and provide meals in a more appropriate setting. At this moment, we don't have an alternate space to be able to do that. We've offered to the Downtown Bid, who has been particularly concerned about those activities in the park on the weekend, if they can help us find an alternate location where we can provide meals inside, that we would absolutely be willing to work with them and work with the groups who come in with meals to create an alternate environment for that.
Councilmember?
I would just add to that, the other piece that we do is work with the Park Service to make sure that we keep the park as clean as possible, and that the litter and any debris that is there, which usually occurs from the weekend activities, are picked up immediately at the beginning of the week. So our Public Works agency has talked with the Park Service and asked them to focus on that.
Councilmember Silverman?
Thank you. Thank you so much, Deputy Mayor and Director Zeilinger, and thank you, Mayor Bowser, for keeping all of our focus on this issue. I do have a few, I must have missed a few specifics. First of all, on page 9, or in our packet, so it looks like you were saying, Director Zeilinger, that you continue to see an inflow of families. What is our capacity in terms of motels? We're at capacity at DC General, it looks like, 267, we have 282. So we're almost at capacity there. 367, it looks like we don't see an outflow of families from our motels, and the numbers remain constant at our temporary shelter.
So because the number is constant, does not mean that the people are constant. So
Okay.
there's inflow and outflow from all of the locations. Those are the number of people who, and the number of families who are occupying those spaces from week to week. We have some rooms that go offline for maintenance and come back online, which is, but the demand continues to be high, and we continue to meet it. We overflow into motels when we fill up our base inventory, and we are overflowing in motels, and that is more elastic capacity where we have contracts with motels with pre-negotiated rates to add to those when we need to add to the number of hotel rooms.
So just to get an understanding in terms of what more capacity, do we not expect to see another spike in the winter because we have a year-round entry system now, or do we expect a spike, and how many more motel rooms do we expect we need?
So in our winter plan, we plan for a spike. We don't think that one season of year-round access is going to get us to a more normalized inflow and outflow, that we've got some important systems changes where we will evolve there. But we always, in our winter plan, try to plan for worst-case scenario. And so I believe that are planning to, if needed, have the capacity to expand all the way up to serve more than, if you subtract out the apartment-style shelters between DC General and the overflow motels, more than 700 families at what is traditionally our peak toward the end of February. We are not judging our success in our implementation of the winter plan, whether we predict that number right, but whether we have the right practices in place, that we meet our legal responsibility to appropriately shelter families when they need it throughout the season, families who are eligible. So we will, on a weekly basis, we are monitoring our inflows and outflows and adjusting our projections based on what we're actually seeing.
Okay, thank you. I'll follow up on some other things, because I was just interested in the community input in the smaller shelters. What is the timeline? So I see here you're going to sign letters of intent, but what is the timeline in terms of getting real community input that is meaningful and that neighbors feel like they have been able to express their opinions, and when do we actually need to sign these contracts? And can you just, maybe since I haven't been here 25 years, like how this process works in terms of like, you're going to send contracts to the council, are we going to have or do you expect that we'll have hearings on that? Like just a little more detail on the process.
Do you want me to do this? Okay. So also, not being the property, being the Human Services Director in close partnership with several other agencies who are involved in this, primarily DGS, who does the property deals. Letters of intent are non-binding, but it's where we negotiate and agree to to terms, so that we know that we have a deal that we can bring forward. Then from there, we work on design and plans and costing, and then lease agreements and other, some of them are leases and some of them would be development on district property, and then we would then send that packet. We would do some engagement with council members, with ANC chairs, with other leaders in the community, and then send those packages to council. Council then has a period of time, and someone else can weigh in on exactly how many days that is to review those sites, and then they may go through with passive approval, or you may choose to have a hearing on them. I think that's within the discretion, my understanding is that's within the discretion of the council, how you do that. But we are planning the time to have robust engagement during that period from when we announce it going forward, to make sure that we're working with members of the community. And this is where, again, we know that people support the idea of what we're doing, and we understand as well that when it comes down to concretely the program in their neighborhood, that we want to help them understand how they can also support the actual housing.
Sometimes I don't consume information orally as well. So is the executive going to have hearings? Like, Mayor, do you plan to have like a forum in every ward where there's going to be a site? Or do you think that, I guess, burden
No,
will
we
all
will
be on
have-
the council
we
to
will have-
council members to do that work?
We will have community meetings.
Okay, and that will be right after the package is announced to the council? I'm just trying to get an understanding of the mechanics here.
Right, and council member, we don't have every date laid out in stone. So
I'm not asking for dates, just
Right.
sort of how the process will work.
Generally, we, as is laid out on my slide 9, and maybe your slide 8, is that when we have all of the necessary paperwork secured for all the sites, we will start phase 2, and that's kind of immediate stakeholder engagement, followed by community engagement.
I see, okay. And then finally on the encampments, I'm sorry, because there was a lot of good information you gave here.
Before you move
Oh,
on, if you
yeah.
have some suggestions
Oh.
about the community engagement, we're happy to hear them. I recognize it's a difficult issue that is going to take, difficult discussion, and I also recognize that there will, be criticisms regardless of how the community engagement is rolled out. So I'm happy to take any suggestions.
I very much appreciate that. I think, one thing I would say is that having a process that the public understands from the beginning, and like what will happen and the timeline, I think when people have expectations about how things will happen, there's always better dialogue. And I personally, I'd be happy to work with the administration on that. Just finally, on the encampment issue, there was a lot of good discussion. One concern, though, is that this is like an exercise in insanity a little bit, and that we clean up, and as you said, Deputy Mayor, people return. So specifically, you mentioned, I think, 24 to 25 tents. It's very visible. I think there was a story in the Washington Post that you mentioned about, I think, a very good-hearted person who had their unintended consequences of what he thought was a great act. And it is, in that he was concerned that people weren't sheltered from the elements who are outside. But how many people from that cleanup on Friday actually went into shelter? I'll just ask all my questions and then be quiet. Where did they go? How many people have returned? Did we learn any lessons from Friday? And are more cleaning scheduled?
Let me just say that we understood that there were 23 tents, and on Friday, and we asked people to move on voluntarily after months of services and having matched many people with shelter or housing. And the specifics we can provide you offline. And at the end of Friday, there were 5 tents remaining. And as I understand it, there were 2 that were added since then. Our process will be to notice everyone. If there's something new, our intent is that there will be no new tents. And we're going to work with all of our partners to see that that happens. But the protocol that was outlined in the slides will be followed every day.
So you can't speak to how many of them went into shelter or where they went?
We can follow up, because there are a number of individuals that's still in motion this week. They're getting their apartments inspected. But we do have a list of all of the individuals who were there, how they were engaged, and what the follow-up is. So we can do that as a follow-up.
Mayor Bowser, why don't we move to the China Trade Delegation report? Who, you? Okay, you'll be the last one then on the homelessness. Kenyon?
If you could, and thank you for the presentation. This is helpful. I did want to follow up on slide 7, where you mentioned that every ward will shoulder responsibility, which I think is obviously the right way to go with this. But I know I've had conversations with you, Ms. Mayor, and others in the administration about some of the issues facing Ward 5 and with the existing shelters and other conditions in parts of the ward. And I know you can imagine that there are other wards and other residents in the city who are particularly sensitive to the issues that they're facing with homelessness and are on edge about the location. So if you could just share, and perhaps I missed it a little earlier, some of the thought and considerations that you all made in identifying the sites. And then when you said every ward will shoulder responsibility, what exactly you mean when you say it? Because conceptually I agree with that, but I'm not sure I understand what it means.
So first and foremost, we're looking for sites that are going to allow us to provide the most appropriate services and supports that families who need emergency housing, who experience homelessness, need. And so that is number one. We have focused our efforts in proactive ways in the wards where we don't currently have similar services. So where we didn't have properties coming to us through our solicitation, DGS worked with brokers, and we went out actively seeking properties in those wards so that we could, in fact, have a multi-ward strategy. So we're certainly prioritizing and ensuring that we are having programs and services in wards where they currently are not, and taking into account where we have things, but also where are the properties that are going to allow us to provide the kind of setting and supports that families need so that they can receive those emergency services and be supported in the right atmosphere that I know this council and all of us care very much about, so that we can then support them to move out quickly.
Kenyon? Is that it? All right, then let's move on to the China.
Great. Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and thank you, Deputy Mayor and Director Zeilinger. As you know, the mayor led a delegation a couple of weeks ago to China, and really, quite simply, the goal is to build on the success of what we've seen in the district, which is private investment that is attracted to and private capital that is flowing into the district for various projects. And so Deputy Mayor Kenner and his staff worked to put that mission together with the idea of attracting additional foreign investment from China and solidifying relationships that will pay dividends to us over the long term. And so I want to turn it over to the Deputy Mayor to walk through that presentation and talk about what the efforts were and the yield was for the China visit. And I know that the CFO also will be making some comments as he was a participant as well into that delegation, as well as the council member, Mr. Evans.
Thank you, City Administrator. Thank you, Council. I will just walk through a few slides, and I will obviously leave open opportunities for other folks that were actually on the delegation to add some additional thoughts if they think that that's necessary. This was the first international trade delegation for the mayor. It was made to China. We visited 2 cities in China, Beijing and Shanghai. On the first slide here, we talked a little bit about sort of before we went, what were we sort of going for? And first and foremost, we are going for money. I think we have gotten somewhere close to $300 million worth of real estate investment dollars from China over the last 4 or 5 years. We want to make sure that we continue to stay in touch with those potential investors and new investors around potential opportunities that are specifically in the District of Columbia. Number 2 is tourism, and we've got a few factoids later on in the presentation, but Chinese tourists now are the largest foreign segment of tourists that visit Washington, D.C., and they are growing, I think, quicker than any other travel segment that we have. What that really means is that they're coming here more and they're spending more. The Chinese tourist tends to stay in D.C. longer and spend more money than an average tourist does, partially because it's a long ways from China to Washington, D.C. So we want to make sure that we continue to touch base with tour operators and other tourism and travel opportunities that we have there. Third, innovation and technology. We're continuing to see the growth of both startups in China, startups in DC, and the ability for companies in DC to expand globally, and the opportunities for Chinese startups to expand to the United States. And when they do, we want them to think about Washington, DC as a place to open business, to generate jobs here in the district. And then finally, we've got economic exchange as well as education, arts, and culture. So continue to have DC-based colleges, hospitals, and other businesses continue to look at opportunities globally, as well as continue to promote exchanges between Washington, D.C. and China, and specifically Beijing, which is a sister city for Washington, D.C., to continue to exchange arts and cultural opportunities. The agenda, it was roughly 5 days. It was 2 cities. This just gives you a sense of the days, and I'll be honest, they were fairly filled. We had lots of individual meetings with, I'd say, both on the protocol as well as sister city, but also on sort of general trade discussions. We met with the mayor of Beijing. We met with Ambassador Max Baucus, who's the U.S. ambassador to China. We met with the vice mayor of Shanghai while we were there. We met with the deputy counsel for China while we were there. We had a host of additional meetings with real estate investment folks, with other business matchmaking. We had a lot of tourism and travel discussions. We visited UCI School, which is a sister school to Alice Deal Middle School, and had an opportunity to learn a little bit more about educational systems there. We caught up with the Georgetown University president, Dr. DeGoya, who also is continuing, along with lots of other universities in Washington, D.C., to expand globally, specifically into China. So we had an opportunity to work with them on a few events. The slide that sort of talks about the meetings, I mean, the short version is there were lots of meetings. And so we did 30 meetings over those 5 days that were specific pretty much to what I'd say were the sort of core group of the delegation. which included the mayor and a few additional business folks. In addition, through the DC China Center, which our office helps to enable, we had lots of other business matchmaking meetings that we set up for universities and small businesses and developers while we were there. So they actually engaged in another close to 40 meetings outside of our core meetings, and so it was a busy trip. The delegation was a mix of education, development, business, and other representatives from Washington, D.C. We had about 40 people in our delegation. We had close to 10 people on the government side and about 30 people on the business side. They included Destination D.C., the Washington, D.C. Economic Partnership, Harry Wingo from the D.C. Chamber of Commerce, former Mayor Williams, who's head of the Federal City Council. We had Jim Denninger, who's the head of the Washington Board of Trade. We had Tony Pierce, who's his chairman, with Aiken Gump. We had the Georgetown University president. We had developers, both large and middle-sized developers. We had a host of different small businesses that had either had business opportunities previously in China or were looking to expand into China. We had Kurt Newman, who's the head of Children's Medical Center there as well. And so, you know, we wanted to make sure that not only were our goals diverse in terms of what we were seeking to accomplish in China, but we wanted to make sure that our delegation matched that as well. Just a few slides on just some sample visits that we made. One of the things that we did different this time compared to some of the previous trips were we wanted to be very focused. I think in some of the previous trips, and some of the other folks who had been on some of the previous trips from Washington, D.C. to China commented on this, that I think previously we were very broad in terms of the opportunities that Washington, D.C. can provide. We talked generally about real estate projects or generally about educational things. This trip we wanted to be very specific, and so we set up two what we called Invest DC forums, where we specifically talked about individual real estate projects that people can invest in today. It was a host of projects, both from the city's perspective, public-private projects, as well as we gave some development partners an opportunity to pitch their own individual projects. And I think that it was received very well, that people came away with it, specifically Chinese investors came away with it knowing that we've got specific opportunities, the size and scope of that, and then having the development folks there to be able to follow up immediately with, is it going to be a joint venture? Is it going to be a managing member situation? How can they actually invest in the projects, I think was very helpful. So the first one we did was in Beijing. We had about 100 or so investors. We had actually planned for about 60, so it was a little oversubscribed, which was great. We had 4 development entities that gave presentations. The mayor gave a presentation. Ambassador Bacchus sort of kicked off the Invest DC Forum, and I thought that it was extremely successful in sort of cultivating some new and some existing investment opportunities for real estate projects in Washington, D.C. We did a similar one in Shanghai, which also provided about 150 Chinese investors as well. EB5, so the EB5 program, which again is a program that's actually run out of the Department of Commerce, which allows for foreign investors to to get to a path for citizenship for them and their families if they invest a certain amount of money in, it doesn't have to be a real estate project, but it's got to be a project that generates jobs in the United States. It's been a program that has been very successful, specifically on the Chinese investor side. Part of that is because there's a very robust group of aggregators of investors in China, and they have been aggregating capital for Los Angeles, for New York City, for Chicago, and Washington, D.C. has been an attractive possibility for many of these investors, mostly because we've got, especially coming out of the recession, our real estate market has maintained some vibrancy, and so we've been able to continue to move projects forward when some other places, specifically in the United States, have not been. And so we had an opportunity to to really celebrate some additional EB5 funding opportunities. One that's mentioned here is the $55 million in EB5 capital for the Skyland project. We recently went to a financial close in October on the Skyland project, which enabled our EB5 capital to actually come into place for the project. So we wanted an opportunity to celebrate that. And I think that it's a good opportunity to also celebrate the fact that what that investment really enables is jobs and affordable housing for our people and our projects in Washington, D.C. I'm going to turn it over to Jeff DeWitt to talk a little bit about tourism.
I think one of the things you notice when you're there is how phenomenal the growth of the China economy has been. When you go into Shanghai, you'll look at pictures from Kurt Newman, who was at the Children's Hospital, the site in the early 90s where it was just vacant land, and now there is another New York City that's been built in Shanghai. So it's like 3 times the size of New York. And the explosion of the economy has created this new middle class, probably analogous to our mindset is, it's like the 1950s, maybe on steroids of the United States in terms of a new economy going in a new middle class, and they want to travel. So we had a meeting. I know the mayor was there, Councilmember Evans, myself, and some other folks were there with a company called C-Trip, C-T-R-I-P. You can go on their website, but it's in Chinese. So unless you read Chinese, it might not be helpful. But you'll see there they have 30,000 full-time employees, and all they do is book travel trips for Chinese citizens to travel abroad and throughout the country. And so 30,000 full-time employees, and they talk to us about where they see the Chinese tourism going, given this exploding middle class that's occurring in China. And you'll see on the chart here, it talks about 103% increase since 2010, and in 2014 a 35% increase from 13 to 14. $108 million of tourism going into the district economy. They talked about that their models had predicted a 50% annual increase in international travel of Chinese national or Chinese citizens, but they think it's possibly could be more of a 100% annual increase. Now I have a hard time, believing that or putting a revenue forecast on it at the current moment or whatever that. I'm kind of you got to see it, but you can see that economy is just really going, and you can see all the building that's occurred. And if you wonder where steel and concrete prices went in the mid-90s, all you got to do is go to Shanghai and look at the fact that they built another New York City during that time period. And so that is, I think, the real value of the trip. The investments are important. You've got projects that are maybe just a little bit 20% short of getting funded, and you get a Chinese investment company that comes in and makes that project go, brings jobs into the city. That's important. But tourism is, we built a 1,000-room hotel, the Marriott, that is really fully operating at full speed, and it went to stabilization very, very quick. And I think a lot of it has to do with things like the Chinese tourism becoming our #1 tourism site. So it is something that I think we need to foster. Speaking as a CFO, we need to foster that and have those relationships with the travel companies in China and making sure people know that we're not just a place to come and spend a half a day to see the monuments and then head off to New York City. I mean, one of the things that we talked about, when you look at their app for C-Trip, you see the Statue of Liberty on there. We want to see the Washington Monument on there, so when a Chinese citizen goes to book a trip, they see that they can go to Washington. It's not just to visit the monuments for a day, it's to stay here and see what a great city we have and all the opportunities and things that we have to do. So promoting tourism, which are, our partners through the convention center do that. But it's not just the investment side, it's continue to nurturing that tourism and making them understand our economy. That's going to benefit us in terms of jobs and sales tax revenue in our hotel industry and restaurants and everything going forward. So when you see that booming growth that they have going on and you see that middle class coming up, they're going to travel. And they'll travel here or they'll travel somewhere else. And we should make sure we get a piece of that.
Great. Just one more fact on the tourism slide is that a couple of years ago, Washington, D.C. invested in a direct route between Beijing and Dulles Airport with the state of Virginia, with the idea that bringing Chinese tourists specifically to the Washington region we see the difference between Maryland, DC, and Virginia. People globally don't. When they come to this region, they're coming to Washington, DC. We felt that it was important to continue to have a direct route because we knew that even if they landed in Dulles, even if they ended up staying in Roslyn in a hotel, they were going to come downtown and spend money to see the monument, to see the White House, and so forth. And so I think that largely our direct route investment is also helping to drive some of that growth that we've seen in tourism over the last few years. Just an example of a business partnership. So we went with Kurt Newman, who's the head of Children's National Medical Center. They unveiled a partnership with Shanghai Children's Medical Center to establish a joint lab space for translational research. One of the things that we learned, I think, from Kurt Newman is that the Shanghai Children's Medical Center is it was one of the global centers for pediatric cancer care and research. And so having additional opportunities for that to be established with an existing institution in Washington, D.C. obviously helps to continue to market, but also to expand the presence of a D.C.-based hospital. And so we were very happy to be a part of that ceremony. On the innovation side, we had an opportunity also while we were there, 1776, which also is based here in Washington, D.C., was doing their Global Challenge Cup. That is where they go out to, I believe, 46 countries, and they receive pitches from local startups, and then they bring them all back to Washington, D.C. in May, and they have a Global Challenge Cup competition where it's the best of the best from around the world. We were able to participate. The mayor was able to present during the 1776 Beijing Challenge Cup that was there. Those are a few of the winners. I would be lying if I told you exactly what they did because I can't remember it, but there were three kind of interesting ideas. There were a lot of interesting ideas that were pitched that night. And I think the good thing about the way that 1776 structures it is that many of the people who pitch are not just pitching on a business opportunity that's going to make them $1 gazillion. They are pitching on things like environmental sustainability, how to solve, making markets more efficient in developing countries. I mean, they're really focusing on some global problems as opposed to just thinking about the bottom line. So we appreciated that opportunity to be there with 1776. A host of diplomatic sort of relationships we continued to foster. We met with, again, the mayor of Beijing, vice mayor of Shanghai, the ambassador, who was actually kind enough, I think, to spend, I think his original intent was to spend 15 or 20 minutes with us. It must have been about an hour that we spent with the ambassador talking about a number of trade, tourism, and other issues while we were there. So just some small next steps. I think we obviously want to continue. One of the opportunities we had there was to speak to Asia's richest person. His name is Chairman Wang, and he is head of Dalian Wanda Group, which is one of, if not the largest real estate company in China. They also are the world's largest owner of movie theaters. They bought AMC Theaters a few years ago. We met with him personally, and he is an incredibly interesting gentleman and very blunt. He said very specifically that he wants to do a deal in Washington, D.C. in the very near term. And so we will continue to work with him and his group to make sure that we at least provide some opportunities to see if something like that is possible. Obviously, we want to continue to foster EB-5 relationships. Some interesting opportunities on the educational front came up in terms of perhaps setting up or starting to talk about a DC International School. On the tourism side, again, because of, I think, some of the relationships that we've created with the Beijing to Dulles route, I think that there's some interest in thinking about should we establish a direct route to Shanghai. Again, it's about a 2.5-hour flight between Beijing and Shanghai, so it's not a common process normally. For people from Shanghai, if they wanted to come to Washington, D.C., they wouldn't probably just go straight to Beijing. They would probably go Shanghai to Chicago and then Chicago to D.C. So we want to make that easier. Again, Shanghai I think if you look at Wikipedia, Shanghai's population might be 20 or 25 million. I've heard estimates as high as 45 million people in Shanghai. There's roughly 20 million or so people in Beijing, and so I think that thinking about a Shanghai direct flight might actually be something of interest for us to think about. And then on the innovation, technology, and business side, just continuing to work with companies both over there and over here. Just wanted to provide just something that came out recently, a Brookings report. Some of you might have participated in the J.P. Morgan and Brookings events over the last few weeks. But the report came out about the greater Washington, D.C. region, and they had one of their points was this one, which is really that over the next 5 years, close to 90% of global economic growth is projected to occur outside of the United States. And so their focus, one of the pieces that they put in the report was that it will be increasingly important then for leaders within the greater Washington area to continue to focus outside of our boundaries if we want to take advantage of some of that growth and make sure that we're continuing to generate jobs and tax revenue for jurisdictions in greater Washington and Washington, D.C. specifically. So I just wanted to point that out. Thank you very much, or Sheshe.
Councilmember Evans,
Thank you, and Brian, that was an excellent summary of the trip. Thank you for that, and I want to personally thank and congratulate the mayor who led this trip and did an outstanding job in doing that, she and her staff in putting this together. I had the opportunity in the past to go on some of these trips, particularly to China 12 years ago with Mayor Williams, and Mayor Williams did comment at the end of this trip that of all the trips that he had done as well, that this one was the most productive he had been on. So I thought that was a very good comment from someone who had done a lot of travel. One of the common themes that we heard, and I think you can confirm this, is that now that we have done this trip and established the relationships, and I have to tell you, it's a big deal when the mayor of the District of Columbia comes, regardless of who the mayor is. It's a big deal because we are the nation's capital of the largest and most powerful country in the world. And so consequently, people are very enthusiastic and very honored to have a visit from us. And the common theme was, now that we've done this, not to lose touch, to do it again and again. Mayor, you may remember they said that. The most important thing is to keep the contacts for people from China to come here and visit with us and make sure that we follow up on all the things that we've done. And I'll just add a couple of extra things because Brian did such a good job. The investment, why Washington, D.C., why the United States? Because China has a lot of money to invest, as do many countries, and they're looking for a stable place in a very unstable world. And there is no more stable place in people's minds than the United States, and there is no more stable place than the capital of the United States. And so that's why Washington, D.C. becomes very, very attractive for people across the world, and particularly in China, to invest their money. As Brian mentioned, the head of Wanda, the richest individual in Asia, wants to invest, I believe he said $1 billion in the next year, and he put the onus on us to find projects for him to invest in. And so that's a very telling statement by that individual. For council members, just running down the list, Deborah Ratner making proposals for getting investment in the yard, Charles, over in Ward 6. Richard Lake for Grimke School, for Brianne in Ward 1. Scott Nordheimer for Walter Reed in Ward 4. And all of these individuals are looking for capital to get these projects done and made
Union
presentations.
Market in Ward 5.
What's that?
And the Union Market properties.
Yeah, in Ward 5. And they made very important presentations to people who have capital to invest. And remember, we struggled for a long time in this city to get people to invest in our headquarters hotel and in City Center. City Center sat there for years because we couldn't find investment. Finally, with Qatar and the Middle East money, we were able to get City Center done, and we were able to get the Convention Center Hotel done. And it is very hard sometimes to get American banks to invest in our projects because of the rules they operate under versus foreign money, which is one of the reasons it's very important that we reach out. Another thing that wasn't mentioned, I just want to mention quickly, the mayor and myself came up with the idea of riding on the subway. And we did. And we went to Shanghai, and we rode on the subway, and it was a very enlightening ride because, number one, they checked all bags going onto the subway and didn't seem to have lines doing it. So something that we in Metro, don't necessarily want to get to, but there's an example of it working. Number two, there was advertising like you've never seen, and it worked. Even in the tunnels, as you were riding along on the trains and you looked out the windows, there was advertising on the walls. When you reached up to grab a hold of the thing to hang on to, there was advertising on every one of them, all the way down. And tastefully done, and the full motion advertising. I'm at Metro, as you know, now one of the 4 people on the board running Metro, and we are desperate for money. And so advertising revenue is a place to look. As I've said many times, we can keep the system exactly like it is and run it exactly like it is. And it will be unreliable, somewhat safe, and not clean. I mean, that's a system we can run. Or we can get enormous amounts of revenue and try and make this a much better system, which is what we all want. So the subway ride was very important. So, and Brian, you mentioned the direct flight from Shanghai to the district, critical. I mean, right now, people fly to New York, fly to Chicago, they don't fly to the district. And getting that flight like we had to with the Beijing flight is really important. So those are some of the highlights. Again, it was a very, very worthwhile trip. We worked very hard, and I think have a lot to show for it. And now the follow-up is going to be very important. So again, thank you.
Thank you, and I do also want to recognize the staff at DMPAD who put a lot of hard work into putting this trip together, which again is building on the relationships established by previous visits from the city to China, and also utilizing and utilizing the efforts of our DC China Center, which we currently have offices in both Beijing and Shanghai. I think the last point I'll make is a point that the ambassador made, and that was there's a lot to do in Beijing and Shanghai, but there are many other cities in China of 10 million plus people. And so part of our next step strategies is to see what connections we need to make in those cities as well.
We may have time for a question or two from members, and then we should move on. Then why don't we turn to the P3 office?
Thank you, Madam Mayor, Mr. Chairman, and members of the council. I want to give you an update, as you requested, on the Office of Public-Private Partnership. We are excited to launch the formation of our new Office of P3. And this is really important, just to set a little context. We have an economy and population that is growing quite significantly. And if we are to continue on our path of growth and prosperity across all 8 wards, we are going to have to grapple with and deal with how we invest in and manage our infrastructure. It's important to talk about what P3 is and what it is not. It is not free money. So there is, you're welcome, Mr. DeWitt. There is not a sort of magic box that will solve all of our infrastructure ails using this method. And it isn't privatization of assets or giving away of our assets or responsibilities as the government. It is a tool that is in the toolbox that will help us meet our infrastructure needs using private capital, looking at life cycle and efficiencies and gaining life cycle efficiencies, but most importantly, protecting the public interest as we use this procurement vehicle as a way to help move against our infrastructure priorities. The enabling legislation that was approved and adopted by council is the vehicle for us to try to deliver on some of our capital projects. Our demand for infrastructure is quite significant. This is just a snapshot of what it is that we need and what currently we have funded in our 6-year plan. And you can look and see that just in this snapshot, there's $7 billion of needs, and we have roughly $2.5 billion of resources. This doesn't include the number of public buildings buildings that either need to be renovated or replaced. It doesn't include roads and streets and bridges, and it doesn't include equipment and fleet needs either. And so the demand is quite significant for what our infrastructure needs are. And we have some. This is just a snapshot, yes. Doesn't include lots of things. But it doesn't, while we have this great demand, if we can go to the next slide, there are significant constraints. And so we know that looking at the debt cap, we are likely to hit that cap by 2022. And we know that as many jurisdictions are experiencing the resources that come from the federal government to invest in our infrastructure is dwindling. And if we want to maintain this positive trajectory that you see in what is, I guess, commonly referred to as the Gandhi slide, then we have to manage against this structural deficit. And that's where the P3 legislation can be helpful. So the Public-Private Partnership Act of 2013 does a couple of things. It formally creates the Office of Public-Private Partnership, and it provides a framework for how procurements work within that office. And so talking about the types of projects that we would solicit for, how we deal with unsolicited proposals, which we are now starting to get from various developers. It talks about the terms that have to be addressed in the agreement and pushes for and makes an adherence to transparency and public input, and certainly establishes a process for council's oversight role. And it is important that it's still, any framework, any deal has to comply with our laws around CBE, fair wage, and environmental laws. And so it is not a tool that allows us to move outside of those processes that we've ensured include equity and participation for our small business community and opportunities for district residents to be employed from investments of public dollars. So our next steps are to formally launch this office. We introduced you to the two key staff individuals that will lead that office, and it is immediately upon their taking formally those positions, we work to develop guidelines and rules that will go to the council for their approval consistent with the legislation about how we will move through procurement processes. And then we have a fair amount of outreach to do with stakeholders, both external. The development community is quite eager to talk to us about what they see as opportunities for partnership with us, and certainly within our own agencies, what projects and what needs they have that could be ripe for a P3 process. And so we will be having both internal stakeholder discussions as well as external stakeholder discussions so that in calendar year 16, we can be quite aggressive about having a vetting and list of projects that we can move against for formal P3 relationships. And so we introduced at the beginning the staff of the P3 office that will work out of the Office of the City Administrator, Seth Miller-Gabriel, who will start later this month, and then Judah Gluckman, who just has to move upstairs to start that process. So we're excited to have them on board. We have a wealth of talent and expertise and knowledge and energy with the two of these gentlemen that will lead these efforts. And so with that, Mr. Chairman, we'll entertain any questions you may have.
Are there questions from members? Let me ask, so Mr. Gabriel has not actually started yet?
He has not actually started yet. I think you're at the end of the month? Monday. He's Monday, right after the Thanksgiving holiday.
Let me be the first to welcome you.
So that is the 30th. That was in my mind, right? Yes, November 30th was in my mind. That is Monday.
That's this month, too.
Yeah, it is this month,
It'll be
yes.
later and it won't be.
Yes.
Any other questions?
On
Thank
that
you.
point, Mr. Chairman, I think that we've heard, we get requests from council members and others who have ideas for the P3 office. So one of the first things that we want to be able to do is tell people how to submit unsolicited is that the right term?
Unsolicited
Ideas
proposals,
or
yeah.
proposals. And so just to everybody, if you can just stay tuned for how those, I think that we first have to get, write the rules and get the rules submitted to the council. But that's what we envision. So what we told people to date is that's coming. Keep up with the ideas, and then there will be a process in place shortly to initiate them. So that's coming.
Councilmember Che.
Does this mean that we lose Judah in his current position?
It does.
Yes.
Well,
It means he's been promoted, and that's what we encourage.
no, and I'm happy for him, but I just wanted to say what a wonderful partner he was in working on things, and I will miss you
Thank you.
in that role.
Thank you. He'll still be around. And so I would say that Judah's worked for me for a number of years while I was on the council and was very instrumental in helping to write the P3 legislation. And so this is a very good progression for him in his career. Congratulations.
Let's then turn to the next item, which is introductions from the Attorney General.
Sure. Thank you very much. We won't be too long. It's my honor to introduce you to two new colleagues. Natalie Ludaway and I, of course, have spent a lot of time building the office and recruiting, and it's really much to Natalie's credit that we're able to attract high caliber folks. The first person I'll introduce is Philip Zipperman. Philip was the Deputy Chief of Consumer Protection at our neighbor state, Maryland. Philip has a national reputation as being a strong consumer protection advocate and a strong litigator. I can tell you that in doing the due diligence and talking to other Attorney General from other state, every Attorney General to a person said that we couldn't get anybody better than Phil. And I'll also note that the private industry also has spoken, and they're afraid of you, Phil. I told them that we're nice in D.C., so we'll soften you up a little bit. But Phil will be making the rounds, and we look very forward to robust actions on the consumer protection front. Last point, I'd be remiss if I didn't thank the council in particular for allotting the slots necessary for us to find good people like Philip Zipperman. The next person I want to introduce you to is our senior counsel, Elizabeth Wilkins. Elizabeth comes to us from the United States Supreme Court, where she most recently clerked for Justice Elena Kagan. Prior to that clerkship, Alyssa worked for the D.C. Circuit Chief Judge, Judge Garland. So Elizabeth is absolutely at work, almost as smart as Alyssa, and we look forward to partnering with everybody here. So thank you very much for giving us that time. I would note one substantive matter, and that relates to the Wren case. You'll remember weeks ago, Councilwoman Shea, we were here talking about the gun cases, and one of the cases we spoke of was Wren. That's a concealed carry case. An issue has really taken over that docket, and the issue that has taken over the docket focuses on whether the federal district judge, Judge Scullin, out of the state of New York, had proper jurisdiction to hear the Wren case in its initial phase. I can tell you that the Solicitor General's office did a fantastic job on Friday, and we're feeling very, very good about the argument. And we look forward to hopefully a result that will be removal of that judge. Right now, the current state of play is that the concealed carry law that the council passed is in effect, and we think with a good decision from the D.C. Circuit, it will remain in effect. Thanks a lot.
Thank you. Are there questions from members? Madam Mayor, do we have any other business for this?
I don't have anything else, Mr. Chairman, other than to just kind of, and we can discuss this in our weekly meeting, if the next meeting is also precedes a holiday, if the council wants to meet in December or not, or we can reconvene in January. And I know that there's one matter that we have previously partnered on that we want to get some ideas and finalize with you, and that's the tree lighting and menorah ceremony that we have in the Wilson Building, and we look to working with you on that. And finally, I would just say, and again, we can discuss with you, we know that there's some important council initiatives that I think would also be appropriate for this meeting, and the one that comes to mind is the paid family leave, and if we could get an update on that. I think the final thing, if we do meet in December or even in January, that we would be prepared to discuss is the recommendations that I received from the Berry Commission.
All right, thank you very much.